We have a panel of what I have called the creative minds, but there are a variety of artists from around the world who would like to demonstrate how 3D digital printing has changed their work or their ideas about sculpture. We have James Hutchinson. He's an artist who transforms images which are informed, derived, and retained from his exposure to everyday events and images. He is inspired by the world around us in all its minutiae and sees beauty in the anonymity of daily detritus. An engaging series of pictures grows like a virus, gathering pace in an expression of waste and the underestimated potential of discarded things. To see Hutchinson's work is to wander through a wonderland psyche. I'm going to have to cut these introductions a little short, but James teaches in Sunderland. He's a senior lecturer at the Fine Art at the University of Sunderland in England, and he will be our first speaker, and I'll give a little introduction after each one. James, would you come up, please?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm going to run through some of my work at quite a breathtaking speed. I've called it new work, or recent work, but I will start with the first stereolithographic print that I made, which was in '98, and it was for this CALM project, and it was called Berlin, London. I apologize for the quality of the slide. This was taken off the internet. But I felt it was important to include this because I was kind of interested in this notion of two cities combined in one space. And I think it's a kind of important idea for the times that we live in, being so connected between different places and kind of living in a digital world and living in the real world. So it's like one city in two places. So I also included this piece because when it was made in '98, it cost about £1,500 to make an object that was about 15 centimeters square by about 10 centimeters deep. And basically, this year we got a MakerBot at Sunderland, and it cost like about that to buy the machine. So in that time, you know, the cost of actually making work has come down enormously, and means that it's a much more realistic tool for an artist to use. So this is from about 2010. This is my interpretation of a space invader. And again, this is something from my childhood. Was you know, in the 80s, going over to the cafes and playing on Space Invaders became part of my life. So it's like this digital world, even though it's a two-dimensional digital world. What I was interested in this piece was kind of visualizing a three-dimensional version of that 2D game. Sorry about this, it's kind of shooting off the top. I don't know if we can zoom it out, but this is a piece called If You Touch Me, I Will Fall, and it's again using appropriated models from, this is from IKEA. You can download 3D models from the internet, and then I've stacked them and had them printed on a ABS machine at Newcastle University in their culture lab. This was from about 2012. Okay, so right now we're sort of bang up to date again. This is our MakerBot. I suppose it's like a Jeff Koons homage, downloading models and then recombining them to make a kind of upside-down world. I suppose Basilitz meets Jeff Koons. And this was done in the summer. This is a large blue blob, which was the biggest thing we got out of the MakerBot, and it was done using Sculptris, which is a fantastic software. Again, downloadable, totally free, excellent for students to get to grips with 3D modeling, quite intuitive, kind of like virtual clay. This is the piece that's in the gallery, and it's actually a couple of years old now, but it's called The House of Ears. And in a way, it's my first tangle with Mesh Mixer, but it's also Mesh Mixer and Google SketchUp combined. Again, all shareware, free software that students can get hold of and run with. But again, it's this kind of interest in a sort of modernist style with a postmodern listening building. It's kind of a intriguing form. Okay, so this was, again, from before the summer, various small objects on on top of an upside-down blue blob, only white. And now I've got some drawings of the works in Google SketchUp. This is called Towards a New Brutalism, and there it was, printed out. This was the first piece we managed to get out of our MakerBot. I say we've only had it since last Easter, so I think it's been quite a success. You know, slightly temperamental, but it's convinced the faculty to upgrade and get another machine, hopefully over the summer. And there's obviously a little brutalism and a big brutalism. So again, and more drawings. This is a recline, and there's some little outputs. This was called, after Henry Moore, after Martin Kippenberger, Henge. And again, they're just tiny little printouts, but it's this idea of recycling, an artist recycling other works. So again, we have, along with the MakerBot, a MakerBot scanner, which has been fairly problematic to work with, but in a way, some of the errors and glitches of working with that have thrown up some kind of interesting works. Now, in the summer, I went to Ars Mathematica to the presentation that they did at the Lycée in Paris. Anyway, I've forgotten which one. Lycée National it was. Anyway, and out there I saw this Space Invader, which was the little piece that the artist Space Invader goes around gluing to the walls. And that inspired me to revisit the Space Invader this year. And there it is printed out, and in the gallery in the NY space in Manchester, on a little sort of floating plinth, like the Space Invader going up and down. So a lot of it's gone off the screen a bit. But alongside that object in the gallery, I had these carpet pixel paintings, and the idea was that I was interested in the kind of modular way of constructing paintings alongside this kind of modular Space Invader. And then I'm going to go on and make some more 3D prints based on the forms from these paintings. Okay, so then again, this is works from the MakerBot scanner. One of the sort of strands of my work is this interest in found things, and these were plastic bags, just throwaway plastic bags that have been scanned. I think this is a scan 6 and scan 7, and then printing them out as objects. So in a way, looking at Henry Moore and the idea of beauty in found stones and things, then this is beauty in sort of industrial waste, if you like. So it's a few views of that piece. And then another plastic bag scan with a roll of masking tape. And then I guess we found the MakerBot scanner wasn't functioning so good, so we've taken to using 123D. And this is a 123D scan done on my Android phone. Using 123D Catch, the free software again that you can download. And this is a white plastic bag. And again, I'm really intrigued with the mapping that goes with this, and you know, when you unpick the folders that you get back from 123D Catch, unwrapping them and you know, exploring the painterly qualities of those dissected surfaces. Okay, so this is, I think, a 6-pack. Again, scanning plastic objects and taking them into 3D. Okay, alongside that, I'm also interested in again, working with sculpturists and 3D modeling. So, apologies for it going off the top of the screen there. So these are some various views of one of my sort of reclining forms. And again, I'm interested in these kind of lower res images as well. So I'm not sure that I completely like the super smooth version, or whether I like the more faceted version. And that combination of a kind of mechanical element with an organic form, I think is quite successful. Sorry, all right. Okay, so I'm going to have to rattle on. So again, this is another strand of work for the next show next month in NY Space. Basically, I'm interested in data bending. So that's the 3D object. That's it as a raw file that's then redrawn. And then that's it opened as a STL file. And if I quickly flash through, I don't know if we can, an animation of the kind of data bending work that I've I'm going to have to rush along. So this is it printed out in as a 3D object in glow-in-the-dark material. And the idea is that film and the object are going to be in space. So I'm going to rattle through these last few images and leave it at that.
Thank you, James. Okay. Our next artist is Mary Neubauer. She's shown her numerically driven sculptures and prints widely. Her sculptures and prints are in a number of public and private collections, and she has completed many public art projects in the Western states, including several interactive sculptural works involving light and sound. Her work has been in New York, Paris, Beijing, New Delhi, Adelaide, and Queensland. She's working at the intersection of art and science and exhibits regularly with Aris Mathematica, Intersculpt, Telesculpture, and art and science collaborations. She has been a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome, a Fulbright Fellow in Cambridge, and a Fellow Ford at Indiana, Bloomington. Recent residencies include the Anderson Ranch, Tyrone Guthrie Center, and in Ireland. Would you please welcome Mary Neubauer?
My training was originally in metal casting, a very traditional training. So like Robert, I started out as a metalhead with these works that are industrially minimalistic sand castings. That's where I started, but always had an interest in the intersection of art and science, which was encouraged when I spent a year in Cambridge on a Fulbright. When I came back from England, I became involved in the Partnership for Spatial Modeling at Arizona State University, which is an interdisciplinary collaborative. And first, I only became interested because this would be a good way for me to enlarge my sculptural forms. So here you see some of the early forms that I had created in Cambridge, then enlarged, inspired by biomorphic forms, enlarged digitally with using it's actually a very primitive kind of slice program. Here you see one of the pieces, Star Frog, being milled at the Digital Atelier in New Jersey. This piece was cast in 17 sections, both sand and ceramic shell, so using digital methods to realize a large bronze sculpture with some complexity. This would be an example of my public artwork. Dove Valley Silhouettes was derived from a panoramic photo of a mountain range outside of Phoenix, and the pieces then went through about 5 or 6 platforms, actually, to become this ribbon-like contour that was a backing for some public art benches. There you see some of the steps in my studio. So when I went beyond the idea of just enlarging for public art or large-scale sculpture, using that quick slice program, I noticed artifacts on the surface of what I was creating. The artifacts were made by just the nervous motions of my hand and other factors, but I thought this contains information, and that means other information could be applied to the surfaces of my work, not just the rastered look of the slice program I was using, but other information, perhaps civic or geophysical information. My first research project had to do with 350 years of sunspot data, and here I was wanting to make that data dimensional. These are some of the early experiments using that data set you see on the left, taken since Galileo's time. Actually, and you see the periodicity and the cyclicality of the sunspots. Here, advancing the program and using, Christian mentioned the Bezier curve. So here I am using a concept of a 7-handled Bezier curve to project the data along a north-south axis. Then I'm able to control the height, the rotation of the data, and it really can affect the surfaces that are driven by that underlying form, very sculpturally. You see, particularly in the example on the bottom, some oscillating and spiking factors of solar wind. Next, I got a large public art commission to take a mathematical journey through the city of Phoenix. So this is Heliopolis, where the actual objects are animated, and the viewer is taking on kind of an ambient journey through the objects. I started working with a media artist, Todd Ingalls, at the time, and he used a Bell modeling program to sound model the inside of those objects. So the sounds, the sonification of these objects, again, back to a traditional Bell modeling program, you could realize the shape through the sound that was shaped by this program, and that became part of this project. I wanted to go beyond regional metro data and look at some geophysical factors affecting us now. You can see a global warming factor in the CO2 over a 10-year period in Barrow, Alaska, and then also just the way an Excel chart would look. It has to go through several transformations from a data chart to what I do, but what the chart looks like and then what it is when it's embodied in a 3D sculpture on the bottom slide. This is a commission for a telecommunications company. It's actually complaint data from customers, and the company is humming along nicely until there came along a kind of a bad CEO, and you can see the outlier on the bottom right of the upper form, and that was an anomaly caused by company mismanagement for a period of time. Actually, that guy is in jail now, but Anderson Ranch Center, you can see one that may be of particular interest to some of you now is the second from the right, which is the polar vortex, an image of the polar vortex, but again, realizing some other climate and geophysical data. In continuing to work with Todd Ingalls, the media artist, we've delivered several public art commissions which have been very interactive. The first one was a photoluminescent sound garden, which you can see some of my forms, in this case laser cut, so the forms are lightweight enough to carry light and sound. And this is the first of our pieces that had a brain. You can see the brain up on the scaffolding. It required quite a bit of surgery, but after the brain surgery, it worked beautifully and in a very stalwart manner for the long time that this piece was up. And then I'll play a little movie of this piece, The Sensory Meadow, which is much more, hopefully I play it. Oh, it's not. Paul, can you help me?
Oh, it opened outside of PowerPoint.
In any case, this piece responds not only to passersby, but it also acts like a musical instrument that can pick up traffic data, such as ozone levels, precipitation, water, and so forth. And I don't hear the audio on it, so let me see if I can correct that. No audio. It's not playing either. Okay. We'll try one more. Okay. I'll return. Well, too bad. It's a good video. Oh, here we go. Okay. The movement in this piece is very complex. It has 3 or 4 motion detectors, and the light and sound respond in a pooling fashion, communicating from one unit to another. There are probably about 2 or 3 months of music now composed for this. And then one of the final pieces that I'm going to talk about is the urban flock. This is an exercise in biomimicry where each of these pieces has its own personality. They communicate remotely with one another, and there are certain personalities of these 12 pieces that are friendly, and then there are a couple of disruptors. So I'll finish up by seeing if we can see the video of that.
Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. It's on the next slide.
Okay. So my idea is that not only can viewers respond to sculpture, but the sculpture eventually will be able to respond back in a lifelike fashion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Our next artist, Andrew Werby, is graduated from the University of California in 1974 and has continually educated himself in the various processes, with 3D printing being his expertise. He is an artist who explores the natural world by rearranging forms he finds, and has first developed his juxtamorphic style by making molds from specimens in the university's paleontology, geology, and anthropology department collections. He later went on to found the juxtamorphic art movement, with other artists finding new ways to use nature and art. Please welcome Andrew Werby.
Hello. Oh, this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Like many of us, I started out doing bronze casting, and I got fascinated with making molds, and particularly with making molds of natural objects. For me, they seemed sort of magical, and when you transmute them into another material, something great happened. I don't know. And then I started collaging them together and making sculptures out of them. This is a early 3D print I made with the Z-Corp machine. This is a powder-based process where the powder is layered down, and then essentially a binder is ink jetted onto the surface of that, and more powder is laid down and built up in layers. This is various different fish and magnolia pod and bamboo root and some teeth and stuff like that. I'm sort of using the same kind of an aesthetic idea that Bruce Beasley was talking about, of making assemblage art, but instead of using pieces of industrial waste or platonic solids and stuff, I'm starting with natural forms, which they have a lot going on with them, and so they have a lot of direction that they want to go in, and then I can find affinities and interesting things that they can do when I sort of manipulate them and pile them up on each other. I was doing this analog for a long time, and when it turned out that I could scan things instead of take molds of them, and be able to change the sizes of things, and and arrange them in different ways, and scale them progressively or repeat in diminutions. I don't know, it opened up a lot of possibilities that I didn't have before. So then I got a color printer, which allowed me to use photographic imagery and apply that to the surfaces of my forms. This is an idea I got from Chris John when I saw that skull that he has in the show there. I said, I got to be able to do that. And so I'm taking my natural forms, and then I'm overlaying them with photographs that I take of in nature, botanical gardens and stuff like that. And this is ammonites and another fossil specimen called Archimedia and a nautilus and whatever. This is based on shark vertebrae and a fossil, and it's overlaid with photographs of cycads and baobab trees. So I was able to use this technique to make all kinds of weird little things. This is using some images I got off of the web. NASA has a great repository of stuff that they got from other planets or galaxies or whatever. And using height field algorithms, I'm able to use that to emboss shapes and also capture the images too and use them to apply them to my little planetoid there. So I call this a souvenir of our universe for visitors. This is another one where I'm taking a magnolia pod and some animal horns and teeth and one thing or another, applying leaf texture or leaf images. And I find it interesting how the photographs sort of sometimes complement the form and sometimes contradict it. So I don't know, there seems to be an interesting tension going on there. And this one's getting kind of complicated here. It's got bamboo roots and acorn squash and some fossil turtle scutes, etc. And it's overlaid with the images of the Proteus flower. And so this is another one where I'm taking various different vertebrae from a fish and nautilus shells and one thing or another. Those are the little ram horn gypsum crystals down at the bottom that I also used in that piece that I've got in the gallery here. So this is a piece I tried the FDM process, and I don't know. I know it's a popular process, but for me, I found it kind of limiting because anytime you go over 45 degrees from the perpendicular, then you have to have supports, and then you have to carve away the supports, and it just becomes a big nightmare. But I tried it. I was not convinced. For me, I think they're going to have to work out the soluble supports on the consumer level printers before it gets real exciting. So anyway, sorry, wrong direction. What I really like is when I can get something done with a SLS printer, and this is one they did for me at a rapid show. The Society of Manufacturing Engineers has a contemporary art gallery they put on in conjunction with basically an industrial trade show. And I was able to get them to print this for me. Here's another one. This one I had to pay for. Had it done in a show in Vienna. But the nice thing was that I didn't have to make a sculpture and put it in a box and send it off through customs and deal with all that. I was able to just email the file, have it printed on the spot, and then they could send it back to me with less of a pressure on it. So I got a machine called the B9 Creator, which is this is a very small piece. It's like a setting for a jewel, but this is got the nice property where you can burn it out. And this is set up on a tree. So I'm getting back into the metal casting aspect of things using this resin that burns out. And so we'll see how that goes. This is like a ring and pendant and sculpture thing. And I also got this thing called the Form 1 printer, which I'm experimenting with. It's really great when it works. I've been having some difficulty with it, but it does allow me to explore transparency, which, like Bruce says, is totally different than sculpture that you just look at the surface of. All kinds of different things happen when you start looking through it. For instance, a form that, where you usually just see a surface, suddenly it changes when the light hits it in different ways. So, I don't know, I've been pretty interested in exploring that. They also have a lot of other colors of resin and some that you can even burn out, but I've mostly been concentrating on the clear because it's the most interesting to me. I've also done a lot of CNC carving. Actually, I was doing that before I was doing 3D printing. It's a little hard to see here, but this is a CNC carved stone and CNC carved wood with a little bit of finial that's got the 3D printed thing on the top. I know CNC carving is still mostly what I do because I can get larger with it than I can with the 3D printing stuff that I've had so far. Although, the Gigabot guys out in front made a fairly good sized piece for me. If you go by there, you can see it. I was fairly impressed, actually. This is another CNC carved piece with a finial that was done in 3D printing. And so, it's nice to be able to take, a piece of scrap wood or, salvaged redwood in this case, that, it's not very expensive, and make a good sized piece out of it with a lot of detail. And this is my last thing. It's it's going to be a part of something else, but I thought I'd show you anyway. So I was kind of jazzed by how it came out. Yeah, it's got something. It's got the bamboo coral as the foundation of it. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's see. Alvin, would you come on up? Alvin Sher, we've known for a long time because he's been the former director of our GLCA program. But what many of our students may or may not know is that Alvin is a sculptor. His works are installed across the U.S. and Europe. As a concerned artist, his works are environmentally friendly. He has works in Dulwich Cathedral, London, Central Park, New York, Houston Bowery, Ward's Island, Holycroft Foundation, Santa Fe, too numerous to mention. Sher has shared his enthusiasm for sculpture as a professor at Goldsmiths, University of London, Indiana University, Hobart and William Smith College, and lastly as the former director of the New York's art program. Please welcome Alvin Sher. Are you in the Mac or the PC?
Well, I'd just like to change the since I know.
Which one does he use?
The one with his name on it? Whose presentation? Right here?
No, he wants
There he is, the microphone.
the
Just hit the red button.
The red button is the laser pointer. You can advance this way.
At any rate, thank you, Mary, and thank you for putting all this together. It's a fantastic thing. Of course, almost everything that could be said has been said, and so we're here trying to find something for you. Louder.
I think your mic is off. You may have to use this.
Oh, okay. So at any rate, listening to and seeing things that have been shown here, give me a lot to think about. And you know, I've played with devices for many years, and also played with my more traditional metalwork for years, and making a large piece here. That's started out by cutting pieces of paper and making a hand, and then that hand was the part of the device in the sculpture. And a very traditional old studio, which I still use. My early work still continues to interest me, and back in the 70s, I got involved with some other artists who were interested in computer graphics and things like that, and then along came 3D in a very primitive state, and we played with that. But I was still doing these ancient devices. And there's a piece being built underway, making that in my studio. And you could see on the ground in the back is an ancient device. I guess it's ancient me. And very interested in astronomy, and that sort of crept into my work at great length. There's a stainless steel piece. There's another large piece being moved. It actually stands up straight. And I think there's a picture of that out front. And it's an oculus sculpture, and has a hole in the top. You can't see that between the hands because of the angle that was photographed. And it allows a beam of light to come down. This is 14 feet tall, and it's aluminum. And that beam of light moves around at different times of year at noon. And still do a lot of casting. This is me waiting for the iron to heat up. And of course I use computers a lot to figure out and to measure things and how I'm going to go about that when I have to have something done by someone in a bigger studio. I have to do blueprints for that. I was an engineer, a mechanical engineer, so I'm adept at these things, but my themes and my ideas really blend them together rather than moving from one to another. The engineering, the science, and everything about that was very interesting for me, but I could not bear being in an office. So I went back to school and started all over in art school and graduate school, and moved on to some primitive devices. And there's another oculus sculpture, different proportions that I was working out. And this brought me to another thing, because I was doing a number of public artworks. And, you know, I'd go and have to make a presentation to a group, usually some business people, and they couldn't quite understand the blueprints and the drawings. But I tried one time to do a model, something I don't usually do. Everything I do is kind of one of a kind. So I made a 3D model and brought that along with the blueprints and drawings. Of course, they just put the blueprints and drawings aside, and it was like giving a toy to a child. They just loved the model, and they passed it around. And these are all the people who always say to you, well, I can't even draw a straight line. Well, now they had something 3D to play with, and it's helped my work. Some other pieces, 3D pieces I've made. I've exhibited them a bit, but I'm less focused on exhibiting these days, and more interested in the public works, and these seems to be a bit of a nice marriage here. I don't know if I'm going to make any automobiles, but and all the great things that are being done in science today with 3D. It's just, wonderful thing to see, and the way in which they move in different areas. Just a bronze sculpture, and you could see some of the themes that I showed you in some other works with hands and various architectural forms. I've traveled all over the world to look at temples and in some strange places. And so, I've got a head full of these things, and I'm not done with any of them in any material, and who knows what kind of material will come up next for me. This is that sculpture that I showed you in my shop, but put together and standing up. Another piece, and you could see an astronomical device at the top of it. So, I've got this crazy idea of things and how they might go together, and less concerned with separating the things out, but rather to learn from one thing to another, which is always how I've worked anyway. My studio is always filled with unfinished work, and one thing feeds another. And this is the computer rendering of the piece that's in the exhibition out there, and it got me a commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin. Patrick Vissenden is our last speaker of the Creative Minds panel. We're going to hold questions because we have another panel coming up immediately after that, in which we will discuss a lot of issues regarding 3D printing, and some of these artists will be repeated. Patrick Dominic Vissenden is an artist and educator living and working in Montreal, Quebec. He studied in Canada, receiving a master's degree in print media from Concordia, a BFA from Mount Allison, and a BA from St. Francis Xavier University. He is a multidisciplinary artist whose works include drawing, photo, print, media, as well as video and installation performance. He has participated in various group and solo exhibitions in Canada, the United States, and Europe. Please welcome Patrick.
Thank you, Mary. I have this advance. I finally have it spelled correctly, Christian. Le monde n'est pas plate. Oh, sorry. Le monde n'est pas plate is a quote in French, meaning the world is not flat. For the longest while, I had two desperate worlds in my work. One was flat, and one was 3D. I've finally been able to marry the two together, and although I still feel like I'm a flatlander in the realm of 3D, I'm starting to progress a little, and so for me, that talks about that shift that we're now seeing, that we're all flatlanders in this new world of 3D, and it's kind of an exciting thing to be a part of. The second quotation here by one of my favorite authors, Isaac Asimov, kind of talks a little bit about my interest in this area stemming from other areas of inquiry, and I'm borrowing here from something that you'd say about the science. The most exciting phases or phrase to hear in science, and the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but that's funny. And for me, I think that applies to art as well, and to the things that I've been making. A lot of the most interesting things for me that have been happening in my work are as a result of things that are a little bit out of the ordinary from what I've set up to do. I feel like the sentiment expressed by Asimov is similar to the notion that speaks about the unexpected, and it holds equally true for art and the creative process, especially for my creative process. For me, the most interesting things in my art arise out of the confluence between the search for knowledge inspired by my curiosity and the embrace of the unforeseen. I'm curious to find out where my creative drive will lead, and I'm most satisfied when the creative process leads to unanticipated results. So I kind of I want to see what's around the bend, and I want to see what's over the hill, and part of it was looking outside the art world for inspiration, and it's led me to also incorporate ideas gleaned through the use of technologies from different disciplines, and that's really what led me to 3D printing. So I'm going to start by showing you some work that led to what you'll see later. Okay, and this is a work that precurses most of the 3D work, and it's kind of like my primary stock of imagery and sculpture. This is a series of sculptures that are made of microcrystalline wax, and I started by scanning these works using flatbed photography and printing them as 2D printed works. And there's a series here. The project I began in 98, 99 and represent the kind of flatlander origins of what has evolved into my 2D and 3D work. I was interested in creating works that evolved over time but maintained a common history and interrelatedness, and what evolved was a series of sculpture works and print works of what I refer to collectively as biofiction. So they're hand-sculpted wax forms, and they adhere to a few simple structural guidelines that kind of mimic natural structures. They all have proportionate scale. They're all symmetrical in some kind of approximate, varied way, like a lateral symmetry or bilateral or pentalateral. And they're all able to be constructed using subunit structure. So they're all smaller things that I build up and make into larger things. Some of them are evident, you can see on the outside. Some of them have inside structure that you can't see. And this is important for later, for some of the later things that I'll show you. So for me, it creates a tension and resulting in creatures that kind of fluctuate between the familiar and the strange. I also decided that I would start with analog forms and transform them into digital forms. I think for me, part of the pleasure comes out of me working with my hand and allowing for a certain amount of chaos and serendipity. And the other part is when you bring these into the digital realm, they kind of smooth out. So I wanted a bit of randomness in that world of perfection. And here's a couple of more. So just to recap, what follows as a whole from phylum through dark matter, these are the titles, is the transformation of these analog biofictions as they're scanned, interpreted, and reinterpreted using a multiple of digital capture devices and computational software output devices. So here's a phylum where I've had the creatures kind of interact with each other and colorized. This is all done with software. So the pieces were scanned, they're digital photographs, and then they're scanned, they're brought into the computer and outputted as 2D. So this is just kind of a historical lead up. Here's another one called touching, shedding. Here's some, so I'm kind of building up between what I do in 2D and what I'm doing in 3D, and it's all happening simultaneously. So I don't stop doing 2D stuff when it's not kind of as a progression towards 3D, then I've stopped. I'm constantly looking to increase the basis of my work now. So I still do a lot of photography. I still hand make all these wax figures and then photograph them. And I also use other means of getting them into the computer. So these are slightly out of chronology. These are things I've done kind of recently and in color. A floating form. So I decided to include them because they're good examples of new analog work. Here's the start of dark matter, which is kind of something I like to call. I use dark matter because for me it represents for me an unknown to all those, the vast majority of the universe and even our own biological selves remains hidden to us. This particular one was originally a form similar to this, a wax form that I scanned using a laser scanner. And what you can see here is an example of the triangles that everybody's been talking about that make up the forms. But it's all topological information. It's all on the outside. So I did a series of these, and here's another one. So that's another laser scanner copter. And it's important because they're the first iterations of work that went on to be printed as 3D prints, and it kind of completes for me a cycle between 3D, 2D to 3D. And I think it talks about one of the important things for me as a printmaker, photographer, is the idea of the multiple and the questioning of what is the original and what isn't. And one of the things that 3D print and working digitally does is it kind of just explodes that whole idea and enables you to work back and forth with my forms anyways, and play at either side of creating and really expand. So here you see a section of the pieces that have been printed out. So I was playing with notions of scale. All of these three, you can see here, all of these are the same. The flying pieces there. Most of the differences you see are just from me using a 3D program and squishing or torquing or pulling, affecting scale. So the idea is I can work analog and scan them in the computer and then work with them in the computer, and then I can output them, and then I can come back and rework those as well. So there's a lot of chance to work with these forms. And here's another close-up, working with scale. Here's some color. Not as colorful as Christian's work, but I'm hoping that eventually I'll be able to get around to that. I mean, a lot of this is, I have to work it with time constraints, and there are a lot of avenues I'd love to be able to take, but okay, so that ends the first kind of part of using a laser scanner and then outputting with 3D, and I was using also a Z-Corp powder printer to print these. These following images are an expansion of that dark matter series, and they're composed of digital stills. So when I was talking about the topological information that the laser scanner was permitting me to do, I was still building these forms using subunit structure. So they were all this information that I was never able to see or communicate to anybody. And I thought it was important to be able to do that because it was part of my process. I think the only person who got to see any of those things maybe was my wife, and then not even all of those made it out because I would tend to squish, or I was practicing unnatural selection on a lot of these, and they never made it to print form. So, this is kind of a really small selection of really what I'm doing. So this is a CT scan, a digital still from a 3D program, and it's from a high-resolution CT scan of one of these wax sculptures. So that enabled me to kind of explore inside and outside of these pieces. And the next couple of slides, you'll see the difference is now you can start to look at these things in their entirety as kind of these organisms that have internal organs and personality, body types. So you can see this wax piece that I made holes into because it's CT scanned. Now I can get all the inside stuff, and it's kind of juicier for me. There's a cross section of that sculpture. And this is the one that's actually out in the gallery right now. And so these operate for me as prints, but they also relate to the object itself. And really, I mean, as a sculptor and as a photographer, to be able to play around that way without having to worry about cost is a big plus. Time-wise and here's a couple more examples of still captures. These have yet to be printed. And so I can take these and spin them around and scale them and torque them, and hopefully I'll be able to start putting them together as okay, so last but not least, here's the work that's currently in the exhibit. And it represents kind of the culmination of about 10 years of experimentation on and off. And I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what I now see possible when after this weekend, that's even got my brain going faster. So I'm sure there's going to be more avenues for me to explore. I'd kind of like to finish the presentation just with a small poem that kind of inspired me from the first, and it has to do with a project that I didn't have time to show today. Maybe if I was speaking for longer I would have, but back in 1995 I did a book piece with my father called Art at Science, .137. And I think for me it was the impetus for a lot of this work, and it really talks about how, and many people have mentioned this already, about the connection between all these ways of thinking and knowing, and the importance of having ideational fluency, so that you can see everything from different sides and really get to have a sense of what the world is like, and share. This poem is called Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, and it's a poem about unnatural selection. So for me, phylum and the resulting dark matter are kind of these little creatures and forms that I've been working on for a while, and unnaturally selecting to become works. And it goes like this. Contingency and gene mutation, genetic drift and isolation, all of this in repetition led to life in this rendition. In every locus, niche, or place, adaption is a race. Survivors so become the winners, losers often simply dinners. Flight, not fight, and surreptition win for some the competition. Some achieve the high distinction of special sudden mass extinction, becoming mere apostrophes by losing to catastrophes, and disappearing into voids erased by cosmic asteroids. All in part are come solution to the fact of evolution. Circumstance, enhanced by chance, is real in every nook you glance. The force that acts in this direction is luck and natural selection. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Would the earlier speakers who are scheduled to come up for the panel discussion please come on up to the stage?
Okay, well, there's one thing that you're going to learn about me, which is when I give a presentation or moderate a panel, doesn't matter how late it starts, it always ends on time. So we're going to have a slightly clipped version of what we originally planned, and this is just an opportunity to have all these artists and scholars reflect on this Brown Symposium and share with us a reflection as they take in all the stimulus that we received through these lectures and through the amazing art that we've all enjoyed. Let me just make sure that everyone knows everyone here. You've all seen them. So we've got Bruce and Olaf. Raise your hand, guys. Those are from yesterday. We heard from those folks. We have Mary from the morning session, and we have Robert and Christian from this morning as well. Raise your hand. There we go. Okay, good. And Patrick from the previous session as well. So I'm going to tell them the question that they have a choice of. I'm going to give you two choices. I'm going to be ruthless with time. If you filibust, I will cut you off. And you can pick the question that you'd like to respond to. One is, I think, a little bit easier, and one's a little more challenging. I would love to hear responses to the challenging one, but if you'd rather respond to the other one, I'd appreciate that as well. So here are the two things that I'm very curious about. The first one, oh, yes, please. Patrick. Yes, there's a cash prize. Yes, that is correct. There's always a cash prize, Patrick. Don't you know that? Yeah, this is America. This is not Canada.
Just asking. Just asking. Well, we get a cash prize, but it's taxed.
That's right, exactly. That's true. Okay, here are the two questions that I'd like for you to kind of mull over, and then I'll vamp for a second, and then I'll come back and start with you folks. So the first one is, what will be the limits of this technology? So there are a variety of different ways you can come at this. You could think about it from the ethical vantage point, and Robert actually mentioned this a little bit in terms of the ethics in terms of cells and biology and so forth in terms of living cells. But there are other ethics, right? People now have 3D printed guns. In the future, will there be laws restricting things that you can or can't 3D print? Legal copyright issues. Maybe even, as I was thinking to all of you issues of privilege. Many speakers here were talking about how, eventually everyone will have a 3D printer. Well, probably that, I don't know if that's really true or not, because of course they will cost something even though the price will come down. A lot of people will have one. But does that introduce any kind of issue of privilege? So what are the limits of this technology going forward? That's the easy question. And the hard question, if you really want the prize, is what will make 3D printing obsolete? Don't you want to hear the answer to that? Yes, exactly. So that's the extra one. You only get one. I'll give them a second to think about it, but while they're thinking, I hope you enjoyed this symposium. Did you like it? I think folks will stay around afterwards, even though we'll end right before 1 o'clock as we're supposed to. But please feel free to hang out and engage with the speakers and just share with the exhibitions and also, of course, with the gallery works. And before I turn to them, I just want to again finally acknowledge and thank Professor Mary Visser for an amazing. Will you stand up, please, for an amazing Brown Symposium? Thank you, Mary. Okay, I vamped long enough. We need to get this moving. And I will just randomly start with someone. And I'm going to start with Olaf. Yes, please. And if you can jump on the mic, that'd be great. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, tough one, that. I think the first question, possibly, I think it's one of the areas, though, to me, the technology still has a long way to go. I think, in a way, the social issues behind 3D printing and the ethical issues haven't caught up, and I think, to me, in the near future, it's one of the areas we need to spend a lot of time on is, the social implications of 3D printing, the differences of privilege, for example, you talked about. And then probably just to end up with what will make it obsolete, to my mind, is teleportation. I think that's the one to look forward to. And I think that will include 3D printing to build you back up at the other end.
Was that you said teleportation? I just didn't hear that. Wow, now that's an interesting answer. Now I like that. Teleportation, there's a good one. Let's see. Robert.
I'll go for the $1 million question. 3D printing will become obsolete probably even much faster than everybody realizes because there's a great deal of research. What I was introducing the biological printing, what Dr. Atala was really showing is that all they need is a scaffold. They don't actually need to print, and the cells themselves are intelligent agents. Now, what we have to remember is that our world has been evolving and manufacturing stuff for billions of years. Life has certainly been exponentially expanding. Life is coded, and we are learning to reverse engineer to figure out how that coding works, even at the molecular level. There hasn't really been any discussion about molecular modeling, but that is research that is going on. One of the books that I introduced, The Physics of the Future, in my bibliography, is a lot of discussion, in fact, about that. So you won't really need a 3D printer if you have nanotechnology that learns to build itself.
See, I'm taking notes. learns to build itself. Now, there's a thought. Christian, please.
Christian. Bon, d'abord, je vais prendre. I will take the first question about limitation. Mais on doit envisager la question sous plusieurs aspects, et
Oui.
je vais prendre seulement un aspect peut-être parce que ça serait trop long.
We have to think about this question in a number of different aspects. I'll only touch on one for reasons of time.
Je vais prendre la question, l'aspect artistique en fait du problème.
So I'll address the artistic aspect of this first question.
Comme vous avez vu dans ma présentation, j'ai montré que la première sculpture numérique datait d'il y a 50 ans.
I explained in my presentation that the first digital sculpture is only 50 years old.
Et depuis lors, chaque génération de sculpteurs peut se présenter comme des pionniers.
And so since then, every generation can present itself as the pioneer, every generation of sculptors.
Alors on peut se demander pourquoi, depuis 50 ans, on a des pionniers.
Why is it that since 50 years' time, we have pioneers?
Alors il y a plusieurs réponses. La première, c'est que les technologies évoluent très vite.
A number of answers come to mind. One is that technology is evolving so quickly,
Et donc les artistes ont à recommencer à apprendre de nouvelles techniques tous les 10 ans ou tous les 5 ans.
so artists are having to learn new technologies, new techniques every 5 or even 10 years.
Et je dirais que la deuxième réponse principale, c'est le problème du marché de l'art.
And I would say that the second issue is really the art market.
Parce que le fait que les artistes s'approprient le processus complet de fabrication et de distribution pose un problème au marché de l'art traditionnel.
The fact that artists are now in charge and have within their own means both the creation of art and the distribution or the delivery of art is a problem for the market.
Et donc il y a une perte de pouvoir des acteurs traditionnels, des intermédiaires traditionnels.
So traditional intermediaries or traditional actors in the art market have lost power.
En tout cas, il y a une crainte de cette perte de pouvoir,
At any rate, there's a fear of that loss of power,
même si en fait il faut toujours des médiateurs entre les artistes et les collectionneurs.
even if a certain level of mediation or intermediators between artists and art collectors is still necessary.
Et c'est pourquoi d'ailleurs la limitation est surtout produite, plus que par la technologie, est produite par le système de vente des œuvres d'art, c'est-à-dire que la sculpture numérique a du mal à s'imposer dans les musées, dans les collections.
So I would say that more than an artistic limitation, there's a limitation because the art market as such, not a technological limitation, I'm sorry, but that the system limits this because digital art, digital sculpture has difficulty finding access to museums and art collections.
Alors c'est un point tel qu'il y a, aujourd'hui nous nous revendiquons comme sculpteurs numériques les uns et les autres.
To such a degree that even today, digital sculptors,
on se revendique ouvertement, nous, comme sculpteurs numériques, mais il y a beaucoup de sculpteurs qui se prétendent traditionnels, qui utilisent en cachette et sans le dire des outils numériques.
we are open, digital sculptors are open about the fact that we are engaged in digital sculpture, but even traditional sculptors in a hidden way are using digital technology for their work, but they're not open about it.
Et
Closeted digital
ils ne veulent
sculptures.
pas le dire parce que les collectionneurs ou les musées ou les galeries refuseraient leurs œuvres.
And they won't be open about it, they won't admit to it, because then art galleries and museums would refuse to take on their work.
Je peux citer l'exemple d'un artiste qui avait vendu une œuvre à une dame dans une galerie suisse.
There's an example of an artist who sold work to a Swiss art gallery.
Et quand la dame a appris que c'était une œuvre d'art plastique, une peinture qui a été conçue par ordinateur, quand elle a appris que c'était conçu par ordinateur, elle a rapporté l'œuvre à la galerie.
And when the buyer, the woman who bought une image, c'était une peinture,
un tableau compliqué.
a complicated painting, when she learned that it had been executed using a computer, she returned it to the art gallery, took it back.
Voilà, donc la limitation, elle est plutôt d'un ordre économique et psychologique par rapport au système du marché de l'art.
So I would say that the limitation really is an economic and a psychological one in terms of the system, of the art market.
Thank
Maintenant,
you.
dernière
Whoop,
chose.
I'm gonna, okay, one second more. Go ahead.
Dernière chose, last thing.
Il faut aussi que les sculpteurs eux-mêmes prennent une décision. Est-ce qu'ils veulent accepter que leurs œuvres transitent par Internet à des milliers d'exemplaires,
Sculptors have to-
comme pour les musiciens?
Sculptors have to make a decision too. Do they, or are they willing to let their sculptures out through the internet to millions of users like musicians through the internet, or
Ou est-ce qu'ils veulent faire des œuvres qui sont quasiment uniques à des prix très chers pour pouvoir vivre, évidemment?
or do they limit themselves to making just some unique pieces at very high prices, obviously to live from that?
Thank you. Thank you. Mary, could you grab the mic?
I'm going to take question number 2, and I'm going to follow up with what Robert mentioned about nanotechnology. I think there will be tiny little nanobots. You can throw them in the room. They can go around. They can find their own resources to construct what they need to. And from that point on, they can evolve, and they will be able to make designs through an evolutionary process. Nanoswarms, yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, Patrick,
Yes. I'll address the same question.
and do so on a mic.
Okay, sorry. I think if art is about transmitting ideas, then it would be, for me, the most facile way to transmit what you're really thinking about and expressing it in whatever way you chose. Obviously, even with my forms here that I'm working by hand, and mainly because it is something that I feel like I need a closer connection to physically. Part of it is still, it's a mix of mental, physical. The output as these printers, I can't remember who was complaining about the resolution. It's always the same thing in photography. Oh, it's a resolution. Once the resolution gets better, it's going to be, everything will be fine, and I'll be able to really show you what I'm really talking about. I think if we could somehow tap into each other's minds, I don't know what that would be, and transmit our ideas directly, then it wouldn't, their experience, we would have a lot less problems, probably in the world as a whole. So I know I'm stepping a little bit further into the future maybe, but I think that for me would be the best way, is if we could speak to each other without any barriers. So I don't know, telepathy? I don't even know if that even encompasses what I'm kind of thinking about, because it would have to be some sort of, encompassing. That's it.
Thank you. And Bruce.
Well, as the oldest sculptor here and probably the most traditional, I'm going to take on the issue of not quite ethics, but I might say some philosophical issues for art. The issue of originality is a very, very long and important aspect in the arts. And sculpture didn't suffer from the same threats that photography did to painting, but certainly 3D printing has an aspect of the threat to sculpture and the sense of originality that that photography did to painting. I was on a big symposium just the day before I came here in San Francisco, where someone from the Rijksmuseum was showing a replica of a Rembrandt that was truly the Rembrandt, except it wasn't. But I mean, we're talking at a level now of scanning and reproduction of both color and texture down to the submicron level, which is beyond the point where actually the eye can see. And he brought a Rembrandt painting and just passed it around that was indistinguishable in every way except if you weighed it from an original. And a guy from the museum who's the world's expert in Rembrandt saying this is in every way except by fact, in every way that the human eye can see, a Rembrandt. Well, that's a big deal for the art world. And I think that that's going to have a lot of ramifications. The issue of authenticity really began with fact of that authenticity was linked to quality. The authentic object was better. And that's easily demonstrated by the kind of copies of the Rodins you can buy in any of the museum gift shops. They're a hollow representation of the original. But then as reproduction gets better, authenticity becomes a question of an aura of rather than actual fact. And when you think about some of the questions of authenticity in the auction market, of things being worth a few thousand or tens of millions on the fact of authenticity, not anything about how they looked. But sculpture has, in a way, avoided those things now, but I think that there's going to be a very interesting issues about the importance of authenticity. And I think that I'm not speaking so much about the monetary aspects, but I think that it's going to be an interesting question of how important was what I'll call the aura of authenticity important to us as a whole in a society, as opposed to just, this is a great object and it doesn't matter where it came from.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, before this group spreads out and goes back into the world, while you're all together, and as we had this shared experience of this past day and a half, and we've been stimulated by all these lectures and by all these amazing creative works, I would love to hear kind of a final thought or final reflection from you as to what you've heard through these conversations and these lectures, or what you've seen through some of the exhibits, and anything kind of interesting or thought-provoking or surprising. You're all experts in this. So from an expert vantage point, I was stimulated as a novice, but as an expert, was there anything that you saw or a connection that was unexpected that now is causing you to think even deeper? Anyone would like to chime in and share one final reflection before we call the symposium a day? Yes, please.
Well, I think great art will prevail.
Thanks, Robert. Anyone else wants to jump in here?
Well, actually, I think it's always interesting and enlightening to see whatever work other artists are doing. None of us have a monopoly on ideas. And so I think that any time, for myself, I'm always interested to see what other artists do, and I get big ideas from one and little glimmers of ideas from others, and that's just one of the benefits of just exposure to other artists' work.
Great, thank you. Christian, you want to share a thought?
Oui, moi ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que en dehors du fait que c'est très important que les sculpteurs et les artistes puissent se réunir et parler directement au public,
in addition to the fact that I think it is important for artists and sculptors to be able to get together and talk to a wider public,
c'est aussi intéressant de se trouver dans une université,
it's also interesting for us to meet in a university setting,
puisque nous avons des questions des étudiants qui sont en devenir.
because we hear the questions that are still coming from students, are still to come.
Et une des questions récurrentes qui revient très souvent,
One of the questions
c'est,
that
il y a deux questions. Voilà.
there are two questions that we hear often.
La première, c'est où est-ce que vous trouvez vos idées?
One question is, where do your ideas come from?
Et l'autre question, c'est on aimerait bien faire certaines choses, mais il y a un manque de pluridisciplinarité, les départements ne communiquent pas bien entre eux.
And often students also say there are lots of things that we'd like to do, but there's a lack of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approaches. The departments that we work in or study in don't communicate amongst themselves.
Alors je réponds à la première interrogation en disant qu'il faut toujours avoir le maximum de culture et ne jamais être sur des rails.
To that first question, I always say, well, you have to be exposed to the widest possible culture, the most culture possible, and not be too much along a straight rail path?
Et ben, la deuxième réponse, c'est une question au président, c'est de dire ouvrez les départements, faites que les gens se parlent entre eux.
And the answer to the second question would be to the president, open up your departments, make it possible for departments to speak to each other.
Well, you'll be delighted to know that you've picked the perfect university to engage and also the perfect university to make that statement, because our curriculum actually does just that. Every student, in fact, before they graduate, takes an interdisciplinary class taught by 2 different professors, team taught from 2 different areas. So really, you're preaching to the choir, and I'm glad you're able to allow me to plug Southwestern. So thank you, Christian. That was brilliant. Thank you. Mary, how about a final thought or final reflection as you have all this kind of stimulation still with you?
Yes, what I'm interested in is the intergenerational aspect. That we have established sculptors, we have founders of the movement here, as well as the next generations. As we said in one of our shows, Generation X, Y, and Z, and beyond. So it's interesting how the foundational creators are informing subsequent generations of people in this medium.
And
Thank
vice
you.
versa.
Let's see. Now, Olaf, how about a final thought before we close up?
Yeah, I guess for me, the big takeaway from the Brown Symposium.
It's on.
It's on. There we go. Yeah, for me, the big takeaway from the Brown Symposium, I'm a true believer in people from different disciplines working together. And one of the takeaways for me is this group of artists here all seem to cross those boundaries, combining art, engineering, and science really in a true collaborative manner rather than just using each other to get certain items. And I would encourage all young artists to try to follow some of those models of really exploring other disciplines, learning from them, getting them to help you in true collaboration.
Thank you. And Patrick, I think you're being accused of being Generation Z or something.
Thank you for the compliment. I'm an X, though. I wish, no. Maybe you can print me, eventually they'll be able to print me a skin or something. I think it's really, for me, I don't know if it's one particular thing, but I will say that this synergy in this meeting was, for me, very uplifting. You know, I sometimes get carried away with life, and it's these type of things that make me reflect and give me the chance to kind of like suck energy from other people. Or just the exposure to all these ideas. I'm also the type of person, I think, sometimes I can think on my feet, but sometimes when it's a barrage like this, I'm sure on the plane I'll start having to start writing down, or a week later these things will pop into my head, and I'm very thankful to be able to be a part of that sort of thing, because it's really a privilege and an honor.
Well, I think the greatest compliment that you can give any such symposium is that it remains thought-provoking even as you go forward, and I think that's right. And I'll just take the liberties of speaking for the audience for the past day and a half, how much we have enjoyed all the presentations and all the works of art that we've had, and all the wonderful stimulation of some beautiful ideas. My hand is now kind of cramped writing down so many of your quotes, quite frankly, and I need to go online and actually check out even more of your works than I already knew. So on behalf of Southwestern, on behalf of Mary, I just want to thank all of you and all the other presenters who aren't on this panel for engaging with us and enlightening us. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.